Yeah, welcome to the making of me. Today we are joined by Toni Lamotta, a former spiritual coach, an international acclaimed speaker. After 16 years of living under a vow of obedience, Toni learned to trust her own inner compass. In this episode, she shared her journey from silence to self-trust, practical tools for listening to your guidance, and lessons that can transform the way you make decisions and live your life. Tony, it's really a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
thank you. Yeah, Tony, you have spent 60 years living under a vow of obedience in a convent. Can you share a moment during that time when you first noticed your voice of instinct being quieted?
It's interesting because everything in my life was dictated by external authority. It wasn't suggested or recommended, it was actually dictated because every instinct and everything I was taught to check at the door. If I had a new idea, I was told bring it to someone who is wiser. Or if I felt guidance, it was, your personal insight is the most untrustworthy. And so I silenced myself, even though, there was this hint always because we lived in silence. And so that inner voice was always speaking to me. There were times, for example, we had something called the grand silence, and someone was in need of help. And I knew I could help them and break that silence, So there were times that I had to really stop listening to the outside authority and listen to my own inner voice. It was, I thought, the best way to live at the time. And, so many people, most people listening probably have never taken a vow of obedience, but we all take vows. So they've probably taken a vow to listen to what your family has taught you, or listen to what the corporate culture is, or the perfectionism of what should be better. So everyone takes a vow in a way
Yeah.
to not listen to ourselves. It's amazing. And I'm grateful that after a while, I just couldn't silence that voice anymore. And it is my intention to teach other people who are still silencing that voice to begin to really listen.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Thank you, Tony. So it's fascinating how such early conditioning could shape our relationship with ourselves. At what point did you realize that you needed to reconnect with your inner compass? What was the turning point like?
I don't know that there was any one turning point. It was, just one day I realized I wasn't listening to myself anymore. And when I actually left the convent and began on a spiritual quest, I began studying with different teachers and reading different books, and I actually have come up with what I call the 6 pillars of your inner compass. One of the first things that I learned, I worked with a spiritual director who basically taught me a somatic practice, which was you literally move your hands to release any fears you had. Because I had a fear of listening to my own voice. I think that many people do. We think that, we're being led the wrong way. So, it wasn't one thing that happened. It was an accumulation of instances that finally made me say, wait a minute. I didn't even realize that it was the vow of obedience. I don't think the vow of obedience was meant to be what I took it to be. But I don't think anybody's parents mean for you to follow what they say. And, we take on beliefs. So I wish I could tell you there was one instance that made the
Yeah.
difference, but it was accumulation, and it really took me years to start to trust my own inner knowing. And it wasn't until recently that I looked back and said, what were the things that taught me? And that's what I came up with 6 pillars that are the ways that I learned to trust my inner compass. And now I teach that to others as well. So
Wow. Amazing, amazing. So you often describe our fear not as something to avoid, but as information. Can you share your stories from your journey where fear initially held you back, but later guided you towards the right choice?
where my inspiration, well, I can share one. This was an amazing thing. I am a New Thought minister, and I was in a church in California, And I love the people there, and I was in San Diego, it was gorgeous there, but I got an email about a church in Sarasota, Florida that was looking for a new minister. And my heart just said, it's your church. That's where you need to be next. And so I literally put my house on the market and resigned my job before I even applied for that position. It was amazing. I've done this 2 or 3 times in my life now. This is one of the biggest events. And then there were funny instances that happened when I went for the interview. It was clear that it was the right place, but they were interviewing like 30 people for the job. And I was at a conference, and the other ministers who had applied heard that I was saying I was moving to Sarasota, and they were really annoyed. Like, how do you know that? And I said, don't you know? I mean, it's like, I know. I just know it's the truth. And of course I did get the job. It was pretty amazing. It's scary when I think of it now. I wasn't afraid at the time. I just knew that that was it. And I try to tap into that whenever, especially when I'm making a large decision. About 3 years ago, I moved again and I went through the same kind of process. Everything that looked like it couldn't happen was happening. And all of my friends said, there's no way you're going to make this move. And I literally closed on the condo that I bought the day before I had to move out of the other place. I mean, it just has been, and I have learned to trust that instinct. And part of that instinct, just so people know, it's like when you feel this tremendous sense of peace, it's not just a desire or something that I want. I mean, there are lots of things I want that I don't get necessarily. And I'm not suggesting that everything, but there's an inner sense for all of us that, like, this is true. And I often say, even when I'm teaching, if people aren't in agreement, I must not be speaking truth. Now, that's pretty powerful, because I realize, and I think, with our political situation in our country, at least, we're all have a partial truth. But when we speak truth, when we really know something, everybody just says, oh, yeah, that's right. So it's one of my own tests. When I'm speaking and somebody questions, I think, I might be missing something here. So it's
Yeah.
it's quite an interesting observation. But that inner knowing, I wish I could bottle it and sell that. I mean, it just amazing.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tony. So many people see past experience as mistake. You emphasize that they can actually be lessons. How do you reinterpret your years in the convents as a curriculum for transformation?
Well, one of the things that I believe is that life is never happening to us, it's happening for us. That's a very powerful statement. Life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us. And when you believe that, when you really grasp that, or at least if you don't believe it yet, to stop and say, what would that look like? Then nothing is an accident. Now, I'm no longer Catholic, for example. But I will never call myself a recovering Catholic. There's nothing to recover from. It was the perfect thing for me to do at that time. And the convent it taught me so much. I believe I'm a mystic today because I really learned to communicate with the divine in a way, when you're sitting in silence all the time, there's nobody else to talk to. So it was all kinds of wonderful teachings, and even the vow of obedience wasn't a mistake. Look what it's doing now. I have this wonderful opportunity to share with
Yeah.
people they take vows, So it took a long time before I could see. Sometimes you don't see what the good is, but there's always good. And I teach people, whatever is going on in your life, to stop and say, what's the gift here? How is this for me? And I'll tell you something going on right now. 4 months ago, I fell and broke my ankle in 4 places. So I'm sitting here with a boot on, and I haven't been able to work for a few months. I can't go out. I can't drive. And I made a decision when that happened. It was very interesting. Sitting in the emergency room, I made the decision I could either make this horrible event or I can look for the good. And
Mm.
part of the good is I've seen the support and the love that's in my life. People have been coming out of the woodwork to support and help me. It's been wonderful. And I'm learning to ask for things that maybe I wouldn't have done before. So, there's it. And it's probably good I'm not yet seeing. I'm still in the midst of it. But that's, if people take away one line from this whole thing, it's life is happening for me, not to me,
Wow.
always.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you for leaving us with that quote. Life doesn't happen to us, but for us. This is a really amazing way of looking at life. Okay, so you talk about integrating mind, body, and heart when you're making decision. How did you learn to do that? And were there practice that help you most in developing this skill?
How to make a decision. Well, part of it, there are a couple of things that I now teach that I learned and it helped me. One of them is a journaling process, not just recording your thoughts, but a journaling process that looks at what your life has been teaching you. All of our lives have a pattern, even though they look like I've been through many different jobs and many different places to live, and it looks scattered. But when you put it in a particular kind of journal, I studied with a man named Ira Progoff. I don't know if you've ever heard the name, but Ira Progoff studied with Carl Jung, and then he went on to create something called the intensive journal. And the intensive journal is an opportunity to look at your life again from the gift without judgment, every single thing that happened. And it looks at you have dialogues with people, with your body, with all kinds of things. It's an amazing. I still teach that. I don't teach the intensive journal. That's a proprietary document, but I teach a form of that because I also use music in all of my courses and things. And so we do a lot of music that goes with it, but people get in touch with periods of their life. And then there's another training that I do called quantum living. And that is looking the ways we're triggered. And when you're triggered today, like somebody says something you don't like, to go back and say, rather than how do I fix the outside, where is this coming from? Where in my life has this happened before? When have I felt this way? And there's a process, it's actually a 6-week process that we go through. And then 21 days of those 6 weeks, you keep looking at the different situations, and then you learn to do what is known as neuroplasticity. You literally go back to memories and change the memory, not what happened, but what you made what happened believe. What you
Mm.
made believe happened as a result of it. I give you one example. When I was probably in second or third grade, I brought home a report card that probably had nothing less than a 98 on it. And my dad looked at the report card and said, "So why isn't it 100?" I grew up. I mean, we all have had messages like that. And I know now he never meant to put me down. But I grew up believing that no matter what I did, it was never going to be good enough. And it was a strong belief that literally I only changed a couple of years ago. And I changed it through this process where I stopped and said, again, just because daddy says it doesn't make it true. That's one of the ways we listen to outside theory. And then I realized that I could change that whole memory. And now I picture my father celebrating and I no longer have that belief. It really has changed the belief. I know lots of people talk about belief change, but this particular process is the most powerful one I've ever done. And I'll get to change. And it's one of my pillars. It's one of the things that, I look at. You look at what life is actually sharing with you, because life is giving you exactly what you need for the next step, always.
Wow.
And when we write what is, my other lesson today is accepting what is and living in the present moment is the secret to spiritual growth and fulfillment and happiness as well. Instead of
Wow.
fighting, you got a broken ankle. You can fight it, or you can just accept, hey, what does this mean for now? How do I take this as gift? So
Wow, amazing, amazing. Accepting what it is rather than fighting with it. It's a very lovely way of actually living life. And thank you for sharing that with us, Anthony. So through your coaching and speaking, you have guided hundreds of peoples. What are some of the most common shifts you see when someone stop outsourcing their authority and begin living their inner guidance?
just a lessening of anxiety in general. Most people say to me, "Oh my God, I used to wake up anxious all the time, and now I'm trusting." And, it doesn't mean that anxiety goes away completely. Most people say to me, I recognize like there are two voices, and I now listen to the stronger voice that's saying, this is what you need. And I no longer listen to the voice that says, what's going to happen? So anyway, that's a major one. The other one is just people are making decisions much more quickly. That's the other thing that happens. Anyone who teaches about success say one of the most important things is to make decisions quickly. But if you're living in everybody else's opinions, you've got to check with 12 people before you make a decision. So one of the things that happens now is you make a decision. The other thing is that you stop caring about what everybody else thinks. And that's a huge one. And I think one of my pillars is also conscious aging and taking a look at the aging process. And I think one of the gifts of the aging process is that you stop worrying about what everybody else's opinion and
Yeah.
thoughts, and you begin to really say, I know this is what I need to do, regardless of what it looks like to anyone else. It's very freeing. So there's a lot of freedom that happens.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really lovely, especially when you make reference of anxiety, being that a whole lot of people since got to wake up early in the morning and they're anxious about the future, anxious about what today holds for them, right? Anxious about everything that's going on in their life, and
Excuse me.
that doesn't solve anything, but just triggers a whole lot of fears and a whole lot of things. And the fact that you make reference of them actually more like take holding of their spiritual inner speaking every now and then to actually more like, yes, rather be anxious, they get to look at what do they actually have for me? How do I make most of it? And yeah, live it and love it. This is really amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is hard. It's only recently, it's only in the past few months that I've actually put together this whole program, and I looked at exactly what I'm sharing with you is that, oh my glory, I had a vow of obedience for so long because I'm dealing with a lot of people. I don't know if you know the Enneagram. The Enneagram it's a spiritual growth tool that many people think of as a personality typing. And there's one type in particular who's always worried, who's always looking
Yeah.
for the next shoe to drop. And that's the people that I gravitate towards. And those are the people that I seem to help. And I'm like, I started asking myself, why can I help them? Like, what do I know that they need? And I realized that's when I realized I used to be them. I
Yeah.
used to
Yeah.
and here are the things that I have learned over the years, and why don't I put it together? And I'm finding that as I'm sharing it with people, they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is so helpful," that there's guidance all around. I also teach about spiritual guides. I realize that our ancestors and, if you're, well, whatever religion you are, you can look to Jesus or Mohammed or you can look to Buddha to know that you've got some guidance. And we could look to the people who've been part of our past. And there are just so many ways that we're being guided at all times. And, it's just an amazing way to live, to know that you're not alone, that, you have what you need. It's all right there within you. It's not like, you got to go searching. You don't have to learn anything. You have to unlearn. You basically unlearn
Yeah.
the fear and unlearn the doubt so that you can start recognizing that the answers are all within us. They're
Yeah.
powerful.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you, Tony. So looking back now, what has changed most profoundly in your life since fully embracing your inner compass? And what advice will you give to someone just beginning their journey?
Well, I think make it fun. Number one is what I would give
Mm,
it to other people. This is not, I have somebody that I'm working with right now. She's one of my coaching clients, and She's been very worried, like, "This goes against what I've learned in the past and and I said, "So don't take it seriously. This is not a new gospel that I want you to learn. I just want you to play with these ideas and play with it." And she has started a journal to recognize all the times that she is getting guidance, and then what the other voices that's going on in her head that's saying, "Don't listen." And so she's now paying attention to that guidance and said to me, "This is fun. I'm laughing more. I'm really enjoying this, and I'm finding it's easier to live this way." It's amazing. So in my own life, part of what it's done for me, this may sound strange, but it's like my whole life has come together with all these teachings. It's like, "Oh my gosh, I have been living this for years and years and didn't even realize it." I was doing lots of separate things, but it's all been guided. It's all been, ordained. There's a point and a purpose, and I couldn't see it, especially in business. I didn't know what it was I was supposed to be doing in business. And suddenly now I'm like, oh my gosh, it's obvious. You're supposed to just teach what you've learned over the years. And it's so freeing. I don't have to be studying a whole lot. I was always thinking I needed to know more. I have 3 masters and 2 doctorates. Thought
Ooh,
that was there, so you gotta learn it, and so now I'm realizing even preparing for something like this, I go within before we get together and just invite guidance to be part and know that the answers that I need will come forth, and so
mm.
far.
Yeah, it has actually. This has really been amazing. I think it's the fact that I think if there's anything I'm going to take out of this is the fact that yeah, make it fun. Life doesn't happen to us. It actually happens for us. And that's really a profound way of looking at everything we actually get to do, either being we target as mistake or we target at one thing or the other. But at the end of the day, everything work for good, being that, yeah, everything is needed for who we have become and what we are currently championing and the current decision we make it becomes better being that we have actually been able to kind of seeing the good in each and everything we passed through before. And it's really amazing way of looking at things.
Yeah, because when you're looking for what's gonna go wrong, you'll see it, but when you're looking
Yeah.
for what's good here, that's what
Yeah.
shows, it's like, so I'm now just looking for the good, and it's amazing that it does show up,
Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think from what you just said, it just speaks volumes to the fact that sometimes what we are looking at in terms of what we get to believe and in terms of what we expect sometimes have a way of generating energy towards what actually might like come into being in the future or what to actually come into what we are looking at. So to make it in a better way, have fun and don't see it as the fact that it's happening to you, but definitely it's actually more like happening for you towards the better good. And I think it's a really lovely way of looking at it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Yeah, thank you. So, Tony, how can my audience learn more about you? How can they reach out to you? And where is the best platform to do this?
Well, I have a bunch of things I was gonna offer a gift. I think that the easiest thing is to go to my website, ToniLamotta.com. So it's ToniLamotta.com. And they can sign up, and what they'll get is a quiz to see how well you're following your inner guidance. But then it will put them on my mailing list, which then every time I'm offering something, they'll be invited to come to it rather than just give them one thing. This
Yeah.
opens them to everything that's there. I hope people will look at, this 6 month, I'm doing a 6 month program right now where I'm teaching all of these teachings. And one day a week is a teaching, and one day a week we do coaching with people. And it's a group coaching project. If anybody's interested, they can just write to me. My email is drtony, Dr. Tony at ToniLamotta.com. So I would love to hear from people. If they're interested, we can just have a phone conversation. If I can help in any way, I would love to.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tony. This has really been amazing. Yeah, thank you, Tony. Just to remind us that our inner guidance is always available, even after years of following on the other expectation, by learning to listening, trust, and and integrate our experience, we can live with clarity and courage. For those ready to explore, you reach out to the show note and you're getting going to Carnival. See the link where you can connect with Tony. Thank you for listening to The Making of Me. And once again, it's really a pleasure having you on the show, Tony.
Thank you. It's been a
Yeah.
pleasure.